Yeah, I think that's us core right now, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, we'll just kick off. I expect everybody else to join shortly. Ordinary business is as per the agenda, unless I'm told differently. Declarations of interest. Again, members can declare an interest now or at any time during the meeting. Move on to item 4.1, minutes of the Performance Review and Scrutiny Committee, the 28th of October. Members happy that it's a correct record? Any questions? Yes. Matters arising? None. Okay. Can we move on to 4.2, the action log? Is there any updates for the officers, or does anybody want to raise anything? Rebecca?
Yeah, I missed the last meeting. I was just unsure whether people are looking for a written update or happy with a verbal update in respect to our asylum-seeking children and resettlement. Happy to do either, just wasn't 100% sure what people were looking for.
I think you were going to, they were asked to circulate that around the 18 elected members, if that's possible, just an email.
That's absolutely
unless
fine.
Somebody tells me different.
We've got a new resettlement manager starting in the new year, so I will write a summary up and include the details of the new manager so that people will have that. Probably be the beginning of the year now, but I'll make sure that gets out to everybody. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we want to item 5.1, inspection of community asset team, report by the head of adult services. Nick, I'm looking for you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this was what's called a short announced inspection. So we got a little bit of notice that took place in September of this year. The community access team provides day support for people with learning disabilities. It's the other half of the coin of Cherry Road. The two internal services we have, the grades are set out in the report. They do mark an improvement on the previous inspection, which is positive. There were a number of strengths highlighted in the report. The feedback from people who use the services was felt to be good. There was a strong value base throughout the service from staff, and there were good community links, which is something that the team prides itself on. And there was a sustainability in the community, and I suppose what they meant by that was the service provides services across a range of sites around Midlothian, so it's felt to be very community centred. There were 3 improvement areas set out. It was felt that the better consultation was needed with service users around changes. And then there were a couple just around training and competency-based observations and a training matrix that they felt needs developed. But overall, I would submit this is a really positive report from a very good service generally. And I would want to thank all the staff that are involved in the service, particularly the management. Thank you, Derek.
Cheers, Nick. Thank you. Debbie?
Apologies, Chair, I couldn't find my unmute button. Yeah, I just wanted to say I really welcome this report, Nick. It's really positive to see. I've had a bit of dealings with the CAT team. I've been along when they've done their Olympics and given out not just them but other groups there, and had a chance to chat to service users, and it's just a really great report to see. Really wanted to highlight the bit about the staff having a really strong values base and consistently mindful of promoting people's health and well-being, offering choices, respectful and good at listening. And you know, I don't know what else you could ask for your staff for that. So just really well done to all concerned. It's really quite heartening to see. Thank you.
Absolutely, very positive report. Any other questions? I can't see any other hands up. So, Nick, thank you. If you could thank all the staff involved for us on this. Thank you very much. Quarter 2 is the Education Performance Report. Michelle, I take it.
Thank you. So this report covers the performance of education and CLLE services between the period July through to September. You will note from the report positive progress has been made across both services with improvement priorities on track. A couple of items I'd like to highlight from education include the publication of or the submission of the ACEL, or Achievement of Curriculum for Excellence levels, for P1, P4, P7 and S3 pupils, as well as senior phase data, which we gained in August. We're delighted to report the positive trajectory for both sets of data and the fact that Midlothian have achieved their stretch aims for 24-25. A more detailed report will be presented to full council next week. During this quarter, we also saw 3 new policies launched, all of which are to support learners in the classroom. The first being dyslexia, second, neurodiverse learners, i.e. My Predictable Day, and then the Relationships for Learning policy. These were co-produced with staff and will help frontline staff to reduce barriers to learning and support positive behaviour in classrooms. As well as the development of the policy, we've also introduced staff professional learning and a range of resources so that we can fully embed these policies into practice. This quarter, we also saw the introduction of the Youth Cabinet. Although in its infancy, we are confident that this will help to shape services for children in the future, and we're very excited by this development. A key contributing factor to our success as a service is our investment in the development of our staff so that they can be the best versions of themselves. I'm delighted that the progressive training for support staff continues to be delivered at every in-service day, and you'll note from the report the positive impact that this is having on staff. The 2 areas that remain stubbornly resistant to improvement are our response times to complaints, in part due to the complexity of the complaint, but also the disruption of school holidays. We continue to work on this area. The other area relates to exclusions. These remain higher than we would like, but are symptomatic of the level of distress and dysregulation of a very small number of learners in our schools. Officers continue to work with schools on support plans for individuals to reduce the risk of escalation and exclusion. And the multi-agency behaviour group continues to meet to look at system-wide improvements to support all staff to manage behaviour in schools. In terms of CLLE, you'll also note an impressive range of activity across youth work, adult learning, community and employability. The report details the numbers of people accessing the service and the positive impact that is having on individuals, in some cases life-changing. In summary, the strong evidence of progress towards targets in CLLE and achievement of outcomes. I wish to thank the education and CLLE teams and wider partners for the positive impact that they continue to have and their contribution to this quarter's performance. I wish them a well-deserved rest when the holidays come, and all the best for 2026.
Thank you, Michelle. David?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Michelle. Pretty good report there. Like a lot of the stuff within that, really happy, as you say, to see the pupil cabinet picking up. I've been in a bunch of schools over the last wee while, chatting with their pupil voice reps, and it's just amazing to see the engagement. And actually, I think the excitement about the kids kind of feeling that they're being listened to. They've got a voice and they can see kind of what we're trying to do and how it aligns with their rights and all that sort of stuff. One thing that I'm going to pick you up on, interesting, the wording that you use, stubbornly resisting, an area stubbornly resisting improvement is response to complaints. I hope stubborn resistance isn't a personal point, but I'm just interested. What are you doing about that then? I mean, obviously all these complaints are barred by their nature going to be complex. We understand that. Is it actually a resourcing issue? And do you have a kind of plan for improving that? Because I think it is the nature of those kind of complaints that they end up being escalated to elected members, and they are complex. We expect them to happen, but I think if in a lot of situations where things are escalated to me, I think if they were handled possibly quicker, possibly better, at an earlier stage, they wouldn't necessarily escalate quite as much. So I'm just wondering if you have a plan for addressing that.
Michelle?
So what I'm referring to are the complaints that are recorded on the complaint system. As of today, education continue to have very low numbers. So we've got 6 complaints at the moment. Depending on what the complaint is will depend on whether it is responded to at stage 1, in which case you have 5 days to respond to it. Or if it's more complex, then it moves to stage 2 automatically, and then you have 20 days to be able to respond to it. The problem that you have when a complaint comes in is, if it comes in when schools are on holiday, then and it's a stage 1 complaint, it may not be responded to within 5 days, and then it automatically escalates to a stage 2 complaint. So what we're doing is working with our school leaders to make sure that we have good systems in place to be able to respond within the timeframes that we've got, to prevent delays for the complainant, but also so that it doesn't auto escalate onto the system. As I say, I think as a service, I would, say that I'm very pleased that we have, single figure numbers of complaints, and some of the more recent complaints that have gone to the Ombudsman, to the SPSO, have also indicated that, we have been very thorough in our response to complainants, and that, nothing has been upheld by them. So my plea, as I say, is to try and work with school leaders to try and meet the obligations in terms of the 5-day stage 1 complaints. But the stage 2, as I say, sometimes it does take longer than the 20 days because of the complexity of the complaint. And sometimes we're also waiting for the complainant to come back, with further details, etc. So, yeah, I suppose I'm highlighting it because our performance scorecard says, it's an area that we still need to work on, and my phrasing in terms of, stubbornly resistant is the fact that, we're still not, where we want to be. But it's not a lack of effort. It's purely that, as I say, the timescales don't necessarily work with us.
Yes, thanks, Michelle. Okay. Kelly, Drummond?
Thanks. No, I was just going to say that it was really good to think with that. And also, it was really nice to see how CLLE were celebrating the 50 years of adult learning, and to read some of the stuff that was put out there by people who had accessed the service. So that was really lovely to see.
Thanks, Kelly. Michelle, the area, I've got a wee bit of concern about this area, subject specialists. When we talk in the report, actually reducing class time in the likes of maths and business technologies and that we have in the challenges and risk section. Is this a sort of national problem, or is there anything we can do? Because obviously maths is one of the basics that, no matter what you're wanting to do, it's one of the qualifications along with English that sort of sets the foundations. So if we're struggling for like the maths teachers, is there anything at all we can do? Is there a different way of working we can look at? And is there any response for the unions on any suggestions that have been made?
In terms of shortages in subjects such as maths and technologies, what we're experiencing in Midlothian is being felt across the whole of Scotland, in some cases more acutely in rural areas. In summary, maths graduates are going into the private sector and aren't opting to go into teaching. This year we currently have 27 teachers in teacher training for maths for 400 plus schools across Scotland. So we're just not training enough people, that there isn't the interest in becoming a maths teacher. What we're doing in Midlothian to try and address this in the short term is we're using some of our primary staff to support the delivery of maths in first, second and third year. And we're also working with HR colleagues in terms of if there are opportunities to train graduates within the local area, through our university partnerships, but also looking at, things such as sponsorship, etc. So we are very aware of the impact that this has. It's not where we want to be. As I say, we're working with national agencies and training providers to see alternative ways of gaining the workforce in the areas that we need.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Michelle? Okay, with that, can members agree to note the report? We want to thanks, Michelle.
Chair, sorry,
Stephen.
I have a question. Thanks, Chair. Just a quick question for Michelle or Derek. Just not sure if you'll be aware, but in light of at least one serious incident in our schools and within the last few months, I'm just wondering if we're looking at adapting or amending our mobile phone policy for use in schools, not only to look at the educational benefits of not having access to a phone, but safeguarding issues as well. I'm just wondering if that's something on the radar, something we can look at and look to develop and bring back to council. I don't want to go into details of the specific incident.
So obviously we discussed the mobile phone policy last year, last April, and what was agreed was a set of principles that secondary schools would all adopt. As you know, there's a range of approaches across our 6 secondary schools, and that seems to be working well on the whole. That doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be revisiting this, if there is a strength of feeling. The guidance, the non-statutory guidance that Scottish Government provided direct to schools basically gave permission for the head teacher to make the decision about whether or not they ban mobile phones and how they manage mobile phones within schools. That's still, the stance that we have in Midlothian. I haven't specifically canvassed opinion of secondary heads in recent months about the use of mobile phones. I know, some have been to Edinburgh and to have a look at things that have been adopted in terms of specific wallets, etc. But I still believe it's important that schools have the autonomy to do what's right for their context. But I'm happy at the next secondary head teachers meeting, to open up that discussion to find out whether we want to, review the principles that they developed, to see whether, a change is required. But as I say, for some schools or, for all schools, they are adopting practice that is relevant to their context. I appreciate that we had, an incident in a particular school, but the vast majority of young people do the right thing every day in terms of the mobile phone not being visible and not disrupting learning, not being used for, antisocial behaviour, etc.
Thanks for that. I mean, it's certainly something I would like to revisit in light of that. Yeah, I can take that offline.
Mr. Oliver.
Thanks, Chair, and Councillor Curran. Following on from Michelle's input there, I'm picking that up as I'm going around the schools and meeting the head teachers, and they do have some very similar policies and processes, but it's tightening up on that safeguarding matter that we discussed. So it is very much live on the programme as I'm going round the schools, and we'll be able to report back soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and again, thank you, Michelle, for that report. Move on to 5.3 is the Q2 Children's Services Partnership. Is that Rebecca or Nick that's leading on this?
It's me. Thank you,
Rebecca,
Chair.
thank you.
Right, so this is the Q2 report for Children's Services, which is for July and September this year, and I hope people have enjoyed the new visual format, including the inclusion of some impact statements from the families we work with. I'll not go into detail of the whole report because you've got that, but wanted to highlight some key things. So in terms of a summary of service delivery, what is good to see in the report is that the data is evidencing an increased confidence that referrals are appropriately being directed to the relevant part of our service, that early supports are being accessed by a team around the child and the family wellbeing service, and that where there's an increased level of concern or child protection issues, that they're being directed into the body of the statutory service. What's evident is the level of need and the complexity and the range of adversities that are faced by children, young people and their families is incredibly significant if they're entering statutory services, which is requiring longer term support and intervention to see a reduction of stress and effective outcomes for the families we work with. Likewise, we're seeing this increased complexity and need in our additional support needs and in the referrals that are coming into our disability team. And for the first time, we're seeing a significant delay in how quickly we can assess young people who have additional support needs and look at the instigation of a package of care if that support is required. In respect to our child protection and our looked after population, what we've seen in Q2 is a change in the primary indicator of risk. That's now sitting as neglect. That's a trend that we're seeing across local authorities in the Lothians, but also nationally, and connects to the fact that neglect generally has underlying causes that are impacted by substance use, domestic abuse, and mental health issues. With that comes an increased complexity and an understanding again about longer term intervention, as none of those problems are things that can be quickly resolved with a brief period of intervention. In terms of our looked after population, our numbers are relatively stable. Again, I'm confident to be able to report that the majority of children are in kinship care, then followed by foster care, meaning that they're both resuming lives in a family setting. Where we have children in residential care, some of those are in our own homes, and as people are aware, we've seen an increased reliance on external placements in the last couple of months. We are actively working to reduce that because we know that children are more likely to have positive outcomes if they remain in Mid-Lothian or in our services where we know we're committed to our children. It obviously also has a financial impact for us, and people will see that in financial monitoring. Our workforce is impacted by the challenges that we face in service delivery, and we're doing lots of work again to think about how we support our staff to remain resilient and in work. And in the new year, we'll be heartened to kind of share some information about a full staff conference, which has been done to ensure that we have staff who are confident and competent in their skill set. In terms of successes for Q2, I want to raise two things in particular. We have ongoing success with our income maximisation projects, and in Q2 we had almost £140,000 gained for 45 families across our service. I'm astounded every quarter to continue to report such a huge increase of income for families, but pleased that we can invest in that support for them. And the final thing that I wanted to highlight as a success is that in Q2 we started using care experience young people for interviews for staff in our service. We saw a really productive impact from that, and we've agreed that in the ongoing months we're going to look at how we ensure that that is part of all interviews for frontline staff. Happy to take any questions, and like others, would thank the staff for the ongoing performance that I'm able to share with you today.
Thanks, Rebecca. Questions, comments? Molly?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Rebecca. Chair, my question's in relation, and I know it's not in your gift, Rebecca, to fully have this under control, but it's in relation to young people and young adults, which is quite rightly one of your priorities on the mental health and well-being of children, in particularly the CAMHS list. There's two issues with the CAMHS list that I'm really concerned about. First of all, the first issue I have a real concern about is the time it's taking for these referrals to come through to a diagnosis. The second very concerning thing is the loss of income and benefits during the referral waiting process. I brought this up at the community planning last week. I'm really concerned that we would can we try and lobby for a referral system to be on the radar of the benefit system? Because by the time the referrals come to fruition and diagnosis, you've almost lost 3 years of benefits, which these families badly need to support their child through the CAMS situation. So I'm really concerned about that. We really need to try and lobby to speed up this referral process and get a diagnosis through, because I have a few constituents who need support, needs financial support. They can't get the financial support because they don't have the diagnosis. The diagnosis, as you know, is taking the time because of the referrals and the waiting list. So I'm just wondering if there's some other innovative way we could try and speed up or lobby or on our strategy. Can we put something in place where a referral can identify the need for a benefit or whatever to be attracted to that family, because the support is badly needed, but it can't be given until the diagnosis is in place.
Can I confirm, just before I answer your question, that you're speaking in respect mostly to neurodivergent children and young people as opposed to kind of core mental health services?
Yeah, well, both actually that are referred to CAMS. Anyone that's referred to CAMS, the system and what CAMS does and what it can bring as additional support to families.
So as you say, it's not within our gift in the local authority to kind of change that process, but it is a constant topic of discussion at the GERFEC board. We talk about this every time we meet. Michelle and myself in particular are very loud in our voices about saying this is not good enough. The message we get from the NHS is there is 2 separate processes in CAMS. So one is the processing of core mental health issues. So when you're talking about depression, anxiety, those sorts of things, that's where the NHS has a statutory obligation to report on the timescale of how quickly they assess young people and provide treatment. And over the last couple of years, they've shown a significant shift in kind of reducing the waiting periods. Again, the feeling across the partnership is those waiting periods are still often too long, and the provision of support and treatment thereafter, again, is often not what is required, and families are often left lacking, and they're then sent back to schools or sent back to third sector or to social work services to look at wider scaffolding for children and young people. There is a variety of sources of funding and supports that we do support in the local authority to look at young people's mental health. There's the Community Mental Health Fund and Whole Family Wellbeing, where locally as a partnership working with our third sector providers, we target intervention into young people's mental health. And I think I'm not speaking out of turn for myself. It's not just my opinion. I think in general, partners across the GERFEC board would say that is a better managed response. Again, absolutely, people would appreciate and like there to be more support, but that feels more manageable and feels like it's better shared across the partnership. In respect to neurodiversity, it is a topic of our conversation at every GERFEC board. At the last board and since the board, I have spoken to colleagues including the Children's Commission for NHS, about the inadequacy about what is going on in the NHS in terms of waiting lists. We're now at a point where they've got almost 2,000 kids in the Lothians sitting on waiting for an ND assessment. That means lots of those young people will actually age out of the system before they reach the point of assessment. And again, within what's in our gift, there is lots of conversation about what we can do in terms of schools, better screening and supporting young people based on their behaviour and their characteristics as opposed to a diagnosis. Likewise, what social work and third sector services can do. We've got a whole train of work at the minute around a single point of access, and again, trying to think about all the things the partnership can do whilst someone is waiting for health support. But as I say, we continue to raise that it's inadequate, that where health have been given money to address neurodiversity, what they've done is put that money into strategic planning as opposed to actual service provision. And as I say, we've raised that on multiple occasions with them. I have spoken to the chair of the strategic planning group around neurodiversity, again, about the fact that across the partnership, there is a strong feeling that what they're doing at the minute is not addressing the concern, and that actually all we would see is in years from now, potentially a better system, but that doesn't help all the people who are currently waiting and experiencing problems. In respect to the question about benefits, if an individual family is struggling with benefits, I would suggest that they are directed to citizen advice. Social Security Scotland made a decision a couple of years ago to consider people eligible whilst waiting for assessment based on the national crisis there is for people waiting for assessments. So there are some benefits people can have access to whilst they're waiting, albeit not all benefits. And that is definitely having a positive impact on some families. But I agree with you, it's not within our gift to resolve it. I think from a GERFEC board point of view, we need to decide what we would like to do, and whether that's to come to Grace as Chief Exec and to come to yourselves as elected members, whether we want to collectively lobby or report something back or write to the NHS in respect to the impact it's having on Midlothian citizens. I'm absolutely open to kind of discussion about that.
Thanks for that, Rebecca. I'm fairly certain that we should be lobbying to try and identify that a referral, and the compounding the waiting list very much affects the need for the additional benefit that family needs at that time, not 3.5 years later. Thanks, Rebecca. Thank you for that. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Imrie.
Thanks, Chair. It's actually coming in as a supplementary to what Councillor McHugh said, and that, and Rebecca has more than adequately answered, and it's terrific that the professional officers understand the problem, have the frustration, and are going round in a cul-de-sac, because clearly that's what it is. I mean, I had one family came to see me, and not only is the child neurodivergent, they also have a situation with ADHD. And all of a sudden, they found out that there are actually 2 lists. So not being on one list, waiting for a CAMS assessment, they're actually being put onto a second list as well. And they're talking about 3.5 years minimum before you're going to get a diagnosis. Now, you rightly said, some of those people will actually fall out the system by default because the age barrier. And I really do think, Chair, that we should, as a committee, get the Chief Executive to write to Lothian Health. Because clearly, when we talk about reducing waiting lists, they clearly forgot about the CAMS waiting list. We've got other things about people getting appointments, etc., hospital appointments, but CAMS is really, there's an epidemic out there that is not being neutralised, and if people can't get assessed, it just drives families into depression, and then you end up with mental health issues, which has an impact and effect on society as a whole. So it may be something, Chair, that we want to consider asking the Chief Executive to write to Lothian Health to see if we can get something, certainly something unlocked in this. But thanks very much, Rebecca, for what you're saying.
Yeah, I think if we're all agreed, we'll ask the Chief Executive to write to NHS Lothian. I understand CAMS has already escalated up to Scottish Government level now because of the sheer waiting time, etc. So quite happy to do that. Is there any other questions on this subject? No. Rebecca, just the one for me, and that's the skilled staff shortage. Social workers, and I see here we're still having to rely on locums. As we all know, using locals for this service is probably the last thing we want to do if we can help it. Youngsters need to get a connection to their supports team. Is there any kind of view in any improvement coming forward in the future? Is there anything we can see in the horizon that's going to ease this, do you see?
I mean, it's a national issue. Again, I know that doesn't kind of solve the problem, or in any way solve the problem. I mean, locally, we're doing lots of different things. We've had some positive recruitment rounds recently, which helps, which has reduced the number of agency staff, and that will reduce further as we enter kind of the new year. Like Michelle, we've had conversations with HR around alternative options that could make it more attractive. What we've seen of late is an increase of people applying for the jobs who we would happily appoint, but they're requiring sponsorship. So we're entering a conversation with HR early in the year about the possibility of looking at sponsoring. We've historically done that. I I was going to say a success, but that's a bit impertinent of me to suggest I'm a success of sponsorship. But I personally benefited being sponsored and have been committed to Midlothian for a long time now as a response. So sponsorship is our next step. We've done some targeted recruitment, and again over Christmas there's some more ads. So I'm hopeful that in the new year we'll further reduce our reliance on agency workers.
Great to hear. I would just caution everybody on I don't want us to get into a situation where we do something so Edinburgh has to do it slightly better. East Lothian, we all can remember the golden handcuffs years ago, and where Edinburgh started giving an incentive for social workers to come on to stay. So Midlothian upped that a wee bit, and East Lothian upped that a wee bit, and then it went back to Edinburgh. And what we found was we were all still short of social workers, but paying an awful lot more money for them.
We're trying everything we can do other than a golden handshake. So looking at lots of things in terms of workforce development. Again, Nick and I have had conversations around the fact that other local authorities have a position between a social worker and a team manager. And because we don't offer that, sometimes we're losing experienced social workers. So again, in terms of workforce planning, there's lots of stuff going on. And yes, we will, wherever possible, avoid a financial incentive for people to come to us.
Thank you. Thank you for your report, Rebecca. If there's no other questions, we'll move on to 5.4, adult social care. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. So like others, I'll pick out key highlights from Q2. In terms of learning disabilities, this year we've spent quite a bit of time focusing on our external provision and our quality assurance of that. It's not something we've always done. It's just got an enhanced focus, particularly with our reliance on commission services and learning disabilities. Set out a little bit in the report around the remaining financial challenges in the resource panel. I know there's separate work elsewhere, particularly in an IGB space around that this week particularly. We do continue to review our care packages with ensuring people receive the appropriate care that they need. We're also doing a lot of work with Vocal, our main carers organisation, around ensuring that our offer to carers is enhanced, and actually our performance around carer support plans has been much improved this year, albeit there's always more we could do around that. We do provide over 8,000 hours in the community each week through Care at Home. We do acknowledge we have people waiting, sometimes longer than we would like, but there is a significant offer there in terms of Care at Home across both our external provision, but also our internal provision, which is very good and is probably at a higher percentage within Midlothian than many other areas who have gone to a more commissioned model than we have. In terms of older people, and I appreciate that there's still a number of actions in the action log in relation to new buyers and the work that we're doing there. We're still at the point where we have the 4 streets rather than the 5. I still am of the view that we need a little bit further time to bed in some of the wellbeing changes we made, some of the cultural changes and some of the staffing issues. And I'd also like to see a further inspection work its way through from the Care Inspectorate and see what that looks like before we make further changes. But we do acknowledge that there is a street there that we need to utilise, and we are beginning to think about what we can do in relation to income generation around that. In terms of justice, there's quite a lot in the report around, again, around our engagement with service users. People appreciate that that's historically quite a difficult area to engage with service users, so it's a real feather in the cap of that service that they've managed to do that. It's particularly in relation to those on community payback orders or colloquially doing unpaid work. I've set out a range of the statutory work that we do in adult support and protection. The numbers, I've probably not highlighted this before, it's a little bit hidden at times in some of the performance reporting we do, but the numbers continue to be around about 250 referrals per quarter for adult support and protection. The type of harm is very interesting and generally, or in the main, cuts across 4 main areas: psychological harm, financial harm, physical harm and self-neglect. The last one's particularly important and is particularly a burgeoning area, unfortunately, and it relates to, again, colloquially hoarding, and we see quite a lot of that now, and we've got some very good processes around it, but it is an increasing concern for us. Set out in the report the range of courses that we do across both my service areas and Beck's, the range of courses for staff from those coming in to social care for the first time right through to post-qualifying and right up to the Chief Social Work Officer training that Beck and others are involved in at the moment. Our mental health performance, which I've spoken about many times before, continues to be hugely positive. The wait times for a mental health officer are good. Our bed performance is good. Today we are only using 50% of the beds that we are allocated in the Royal Edinburgh Hospital, for example, which is really good performance in comparison with the rest of Lothian. Our substance use performance is good, and I'll maybe just spend a couple of moments as the figures were published in quarter 2 in relation to drug misuse deaths. So in 2024, which is the figures that were published in September, we had 17 people, which is a decrease of 3 from the 20 in 2023. Our 5-year average is 17, so it's in line with that. We have probably, bar 1 year in 2022, plateaued around about 16 to 20 each year. Our alcohol-related deaths are similar, and we had a slight increase in 2024, where we had 20, which was an increase in the previous year. Our 5-year average is 17. And again, we undertake a range of work in relation to that. One of the areas we found most challenging is around trying to keep up to date with, and I've spoken about this before, about with the change in substances that we're now seeing coming into Scotland and the UK, particularly synthetic opioids. It's very hard to manage those. They're very toxic and dangerous. Again, the context of that is that we have round about 300 to 350 people within our substance use service at any one time. Just finally, set out a couple of things at the end of the report. One is our staff wellbeing offer. That there's some interesting graphics there as well of things that we did over the last quarter, and our work around trauma-informed practice continues, and that's right across council and beyond, albeit the post that we have is hosted within the HSCP. The work takes place right across a range of services from all my chief officer colleagues that are on here. And I just wanted to highlight very finally that we had a very successful launch of Trauma Awareness Week in September. It was the first one of its kind in Scotland, and it was hugely well supported, and thanks to everybody on the call who was involved in that, and it's definitely something we wish to do again. And just like Beck and Michelle, I would like to thank all the staff in health and social care in the last quarter and wish them a very happy festive season. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Questions, comments? None. You seem to be getting away late today, Nick. Okay, Nick, if you could just pass on your thank you to all the staff involved in this for us. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to 5.5, which is Q2 police performance. Mr. Oliver.
Thanks, Chair. This paper details police services performance for Q2 of 25-26. Neighbourhood services continue to grow the council's fleet through the fleet replacement programme. A number of parking green space improvements have been undertaken, and carriageway and footway surfacing similar to the same period last year, with a programme in place to meet the targets by the year end. All information on network and residential streets now available on our website. Protective Services continued its robust regulatory activity and supporting legitimate businesses. Food Standards Scotland audited our food law enforcement practice, and outcome was very positive, with final audit report to follow at the next cabinet cycle. Our approach to growing our own has been successful across food safety, environmental protection, and the wider modern apprenticeship role in regulatory services. The Drinking Water Quality Regulator published the annual report for local authority private water supply performance, with Midlothian Council achieving 100% sampling compliance and risk assessments. DEFRA and SEPA commended the Council on our commitment to air quality monitoring on the back of our annual progress report being approved. In housing, there was a slight decrease in the number of housing applicants. Relet times to permanent accommodation reduced to 42 days compared to 54 days at the end of Q1, and the turnaround times for voids is shown, with 50 properties being turned around on average 11.2 days, 16 properties on average 23.5 days, with 47 properties requiring major work and averaging 64.5 days. Our tenant satisfaction survey went live in September, which will gather direct tenant feedback on our housing service. And in terms of homelessness, we saw a decrease of 16% from Q1 of households in temporary accommodation. Building maintenance has further increased the percentage of council housing stock meeting the Scottish Housing Quality Standard from 90.67% last quarter to 95.6% in Q2. An extensive summer works programme was completed across the learning estate, with capital upgrades and backlog repairs being undertaken. Economic Development and Business Gateway continues to offer consistent levels of activity across various support services, from pre-start to start-up and existing business growth support. Work continues on the delivery of the economic strategy for inclusive growth, with delivery plans coming forward, and the Midlothian tourism strategy on track for finalising this quarter. Planning application performance has improved quarter on quarter since Q3 of 24-25. School meal uptake saw an increase from Q1 for secondary, and sustained uptake in primary schools, sitting well above the Scottish average, with the highest full free school meal uptake over the past year. For sport and leisure, our usage figures for our facilities show a 5% increase compared to the same period last year. Tennis courts were refurbished and saw 514 bookings across the quarter. The Alpine Coaster celebrated its 1-year anniversary in September, and this quarter saw the highest number of rides since it's opened. Our summer holiday programme was well attended, attracting 1,320 children across 13 different activities. 2,581 attendances were recorded for the primary 4 swimming lessons, which was a 46% increase compared to the same period last year. Our Midlothian Active Choices referral programme shows a 37% increase in attendees compared to the same period last year, and the Ageing Well programme marked its 25th anniversary, a thriving, remarkable initiative for our over 50s in the communities. And I'd like to say, as with my colleagues, thanks to all services and colleagues across place, and happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Stevie?
Thanks, Chair. Derek, just a couple of questions. I'm going to focus on homeless, emergency accommodation and temporary accommodation. Just firstly, congratulations to you and all the team on reducing the figure down to 42 days this quarter. That's a brilliant achievement, not only from a council standpoint, but reducing void times, but actually from standpoints where in particular families are looking for that certainty of permanent tenancies. So well done to all the team involved in that. Just on the relet times, and I note there that the relet figures have been higher over the last few quarters due to a change in the Scottish Housing Regulator policies, where flipped tenancies are now excluded. I find that strange, because even though someone's not physically moving house, they're still moving from a temporary tenancy to a permanent tenancy, and that gives them that certainty as well. So I'm not sure if you want to comment on that. And the final, or my second question, last question, is around the housing officers and the number of staff I've got, or number of complement we've got in housing officers. We did speak about this earlier in the year or last year. I think Councillor Mulligan raised it with Kevin Anderson at one of the council meetings, in terms of finding that level where we have the right amount of staff for the number of tenants and homes that we have. So I'm just wondering if you can comment on that as well, please.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor McEwen. In terms of the flip tenancies now being excluded, other than the fact that the criteria has changed for us to be able to account for those to be included in our figures. I don't know the physical reason behind that. I just know that we now exclude that. And in terms of, and I can find out the reason for you. In terms of the staffing, that is currently being looked at, and on the back of our rent consultation that's went out, staffing establishments across building maintenance and housing will be brought forward in terms of a service review. So that will be coming forward in probably the next few months.
Thank you. Chair, just one more question. Is it possible, just offline, if at some point in the next couple of weeks the team could forward me some statistics in terms of our temporary emergency accommodation, such as Janat Court, just around the length of stays, you know, from who stayed there the longest to the shortest, and what the average stay is? That would be helpful, just to make sure that we're, you know, people are staying in line with our current policies as well.
Yeah, I can provide data and statistics to you, Councillor Curran, via the housing service. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, like Stevie, Derek, I've got a real concern. I'm constantly having raised with me that people can't get in contact with housing officers, that they're not getting back to them. And I think we have been promised a benchmarking report to come to us on the amount of staff in house in comparison to other local authorities. I'm not sure what's happening. My screen's gone off funny. So I think it would be important that we can actually get a paper in front of us to show us what the ratio of housing officers is in Midlothian, because certainly when I'm speaking to staff, they're all saying the exact same thing, that they simply do not have the team membership to be able to deal with the sheer volume of calls and contacts, not just for the public but for councillors and MPs, MSPs, etc. And the last I looked at this, which was about 9 months ago, Stevie, I think was like East Lothian, their comparative numbers were way above what we were employing. So is it possible to get that? Kevin, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As you say, we did a bit of quick and dirty benchmarking against East and West Lothian, and indeed they had additional staff and resource in comparison to us, even with leather stock numbers at that point certainly as well. So there has been a piece of work in terms of service reviews Derek's indicated for a structure change. In fact, I'm seeing the housing manager on Thursday because there's the most latest iteration of that, which looks to be nearer conclusion. So we will bring that through our DMT, CMT and ultimately to council, because it is in relation to additional establishment that needs to be addressed, albeit clearly that's funded through HRA. So that will be into the new year, as indicated, that should come forward for sight of members. Thanks.
Kevin, when you're bringing that forward, I'm just wondering, given some of the stuff we've heard here today, with the sheer number of young people that are requiring assessment for additional support needs, and hearing from Nick as well in the mental health stuff, I'm just wondering, because one of the things that gets fed back to me from both constituents and from staff is trying to deal with people, or staff trying to deal with people that have got complex learning difficulties, etc. And some of them are either drink or drug or that difficulties. And a lot of the tenants simply don't have the capacity to be able to fill in like basic forms, etc., or to understand. And I'm just wondering whether we should be looking to see whether we'll have a dedicated resource within housing to be able to deal with people and to assist people that are our tenants or wanting to be our tenants that are requiring housing. I'm just wondering if there's been any thought given to that, given that probably most of the people are people that will end up as tenants of the council.
Yeah, you're right. So we do have specific provision within the team for youth homelessness, as it were, and there are different pathways through for those who are care experienced as well, because there is that provision across BEC and indeed for next teams in terms of discharges also. And as you're well aware, we've built specific provision both in terms of complex needs and learning disabilities in recent years through the HRA as well. So we're open to those requirements, and certainly we're engaged with our colleagues represented here for what needs to be included in the SHIP. There's also reference there for particular needs as well. So we're not resistant to any of that. And as you say, we do appreciate we're probably picking up some displaced demand from other sources as well. So we do have dedicated tenancy support. We also have contracted this very year with the Rock Trust in terms of youth homelessness as well. So clearly we probably do need to demonstrate some of the outcomes of that for members if that's not been visible to date. Thanks.
Yeah, certainly. I'm now regularly dealing with people who've either got substance misuse or mental health issues, who and a lot of them simply not on the radar to either Nick's team or Rebecca's team because they didn't want to engage. However, they still need to keep tenancies, and there's a couple of them in the last year that have actually lost their tenancies because they've failed to engage in any way at all. And when you speak to staff about it, the staff members who didn't have training in dealing with people that with additional needs are telling us that they're trying their best to engage with them, but they're not. And I'm just wondering if it's something that we need to be looking at.
Yeah, I think we can have a conversation offline, because certainly that was the whole premise of Housing First, and we do that really well, actually, in terms of, and that's reflected in the funding that comes our way because of the positive outcomes that we report annually to council. Because back in my day, way back when I was a housing officer, you had to work your way through to deserving a council house, essentially, and go into the necessary supports. Whereas we flipped that clearly to where it is now, is you have your housing as that centre, so you've got that stability, and everything else then comes to you in terms of whatever the needs or dependencies happen to be. So yeah, I'm happy to have a chat with you about that offline, because as I say, we're in the midst of looking at that service structure right now this week anyway. Thanks.
And we can look forward to a report coming forward on the staffing ratio and comparator to similar councils. Okay, if there's no other questions, quite happy to move on to 5.6. Again, Kevin, Derek, if you could just thank all the staff for all their work and dedication. 5.6, Corporate Solutions Performance Report. Sadie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So this performance report focuses in on July to September again for Q2. So key successes here are our libraries, so continuing to see an increase in both physical and virtual visits, and a subsequent increase in our memberships, and a 30% increase in young people's memberships for this quarter compared to this quarter last year. Main focus of libraries over the summer was our summer reading challenge on Story Garden, and over 1,000 children joined the challenge this year, so well done to everybody who took part. This was our second year of our kind of comprehensive one-stop shop around summer activity programme. So Derek's talked about sport and leisure, CLLE as well, and libraries were all involved, and we pulled together a comprehensive plan on our website so that people had a one-stop shop of where to go for activities over the summer. So some of those were free and some of those were paid, and all of that work has led to increased participation across all of our services for the summer activity programme. In terms of transformation, we can see a marked difference in the performance report for our customer contact through our channel shift work. So that's an increase in our online transactions through our customer service platform. So that allows customers to transact with us 24 hours a day, and that frees up our face-to-face contact and our telephone contact for those that need it the most. Most noticeably is the reduction in web forms as more transactions are automated, so that's less back-end processing, less time spent on that, and a quicker customer experience, as well as more transactions that are now automated for payment on demand. So that's better for us. Our focus on workforce continues with the delivery of our wellbeing sessions across the council. We've relaunched our people values at the end of the summer and a review of PVG arrangements. Most noticeably for HR is the decrease in overall sickness absence rates across the council, albeit there are still pockets and services that we're working on specifically. But compared to last year, we've got an overall decrease in sickness. Our work continues to analyse those specific areas that are more challenging. In terms of digital services, we've been focused on our school upgrades for the return of our pupils post-summer and the completion of our school smart panel programme and our continued upgrade of our school telephony. Continuing on our journey to move from ageing on-premise applications to cloud solutions, we've replaced catering service tills in schools and cafes and migrated servers and digital systems to reduce our space requirements for our return into mid-house in 2027. In terms of transactional processes, we continue to work to reduce our paper processes and move to digital and automation. Our invoice approval process continues with a reduction in paper use again this month, as new suppliers are onboarded to e-invoicing. We processed almost 54,000 transactions in the last quarter, and that's an average turnaround time of 10 days to pay invoices. Our legal and governance team continued to progress commercial transactions and coursework, and we've piloted our e-signatures programme, and that will give us greater security, compliance and audit on our contracts and demonstrates our shift to digital approaches. And we also commenced a review of our Education's Appeals Committee in time for next spring-summer cycle. So looking at ways to improve the process for parents and carers in terms of engagement and participation, and a revised training programme and a different approach to recruitment of independent members, which members will be aware is a challenge for us across the whole of Scotland in terms of recruitment for independent members. And we're continuing to redesign our procurement service. We're reviewing our frameworks to increase rebates back to the council and reviewing our annual spend. Work has commenced on the draft of our new procurement strategy, and I'll be bringing that to council in early 2026. And in terms of raising awareness of procurement and compliance, we've almost completed our new contract framework for managers, which will launch early next year. And we're delivering training to schools, and significant progress has been made on the review of our adult health and social care contract register. Like everyone else on the call, as this is the last PRS of the year, we'd like to thank all of our staff at Solutions and across the council for all of their hard work and commitment and working together with us to deliver some of these projects. Our work around transformation has progressed this year, and I'm delighted to present this report to PRS. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sati. Any questions or comments, Stevie?
Thanks, Sati. A couple of things. Just in terms of our library visits, good to see that there's been an increase in the physical visits to our libraries. We're obviously doing a lot of marketing, community commons work in terms of like book clubs and other activities in our libraries. Is there any way we can tie that in, or do we tie it in with perhaps promotions from our cafeterias when we have the hub models in terms of looking at that as potential income generation or increasing that? So, for example, if there's a certain activity at a library, tie that in with maybe a promotion at a cafe. I wonder if that's something that we could think about. And I say this every year, I think, Sati. So in terms of invoicing, can we look at if we can make sure uncontested invoices are paid before the schools break, just like all council staff get paid before Christmas, and I think it's only fair for the contractors that if it's uncontested, they get paid before Christmas as well. And obviously, I declare my usual interest in that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Happy for me to come back in just
Yeah, just
on
come
that.
back in,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. So Derek's actually been talking about cafes in general at Business Transformation Steering Group. So Derek can pick up separately in terms of the work that he's been doing and how we like that, and with some library promotions. I think there's a bit of work that we're doing at the moment just in terms of numbers. So when it's busier in the libraries and how we correlate that with cafes. So we can pick that up. See Derek's nodding. And then in terms of payments, yeah, absolutely. So the comms will be going out this week to confirm and remind everybody to make sure the invoices are all paid and up to date before everyone finishes up for Christmas. So as many payments as possible that we can get out of the door. We absolutely will.
Sati, just so you're aware, we can hear whoever's sitting close to you talking. They're coming over the top of you. Debbie?
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I think everybody knows I'm a huge fan of our libraries. I'm a very regular user, so it was really lovely to see that 8% increase in memberships, but also perhaps more importantly than that, the younger people who are coming in and getting our library memberships. And every time I'm in the library, no matter what time of day or night it is, and I do go in at all different times of the day or night, just depending on when I've got a wee slot in my schedule. I see the range of activities that's going on, and I can't actually remember what they're called now. The Sati, what's the word I'm looking for? The baby group, the one where they sing songs and read to the
Book
babies.
bug.
Thank you for that. Who it was that? Bex, thanks, Bex. The book bugs. The place is absolutely stowed out. You know, they must have had about 30 little ones in Pennycook, and they don't just have the one. They've got several running a week. So I think it's such a great thing, and I know that I've seen them in Gore Bridge as well. That getting youngsters involved from babies is such a positive thing. And then they go on and they've got their Lego clubs, games clubs, their reading challenges. We're doing so much really positive stuff, and it's just fabulous to see. And I know there's stuff, you know, we have the stuff for the adults as well, and we have the reminiscent groups. I've seen that there's a group in conjunction that we're doing with the RNIB as well. I've seen them advertising on Facebook. There's just so much to be positive. And as I say, as a big reader, it fair gladdens my reading heart. So thank you, and thank you to all our fabulous librarians and library staff.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Sati, if you could pass on our thanks to everybody involved, all the staff. Thank you. 5.7 is the Midlothian Council Performance Report. Dr Vickers.
Thank you, Chair. So this Q2 report provides a summary of actions in line with the Single Midlothian Plan and complements the wonderful reports you've already heard from each of the services today. As it is also Q2, the half-year balance scorecard is presented. In this quarter, there are 6 measures of target relating to invoices and complaints, which have been covered by Chief Officers this morning. And like other officers on the call, as this is the last PRS meeting of this calendar year, I wish to thank staff for their hard work over the course of 2025. So thank you, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Questions, comments? Okay, I can see none. Okay, that's the last substantive item. So just thank everybody for their attendance and thank all the staff for the much hard, difficult tasks that they carry out for us every day. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks,
you.
Chair. Thanks, Chair. Well done.